So after a strong June and the beginning of a strong July, the S&P 500 has started to pull back a little bit. Other indices like the Dow Jones, the Nasdaq, the Russell 2000 are doing quite well. And Bitcoin has gone from a downward movement in the beginning of July, bouncing back up from that, moving sideways, now moving higher. Does any of this sound familiar? Let's take a look at some of the predictions that I've made in the past couple of months. So, looking at this chart here, the moon is in Sag, the sun is about to enter solstice in the sign of Cancer with both Mercury and Venus, which can be nice, those aren't bad. So this is telling us that when solstice occurs, we want to get off to a good start. However, this chart is a Scorpio rising, which means that the path that this chart is headed is largely determined by the planet that is in charge of the sign of Scorpio, and that would be Mars. Mars, unfortunately, in this chart is opposing the ascendant, and Mars has the worst dignity and strength of any planet in this chart. Okay. So, with that, Mars opposing the ascendant is also the strongest aspect in this chart. So whatever goodness there might be in this chart, it's all going to fall short of the ruling planet not being able to do what it wants to do, and also opposing the intention of the chart. So this is the chart for Wall Street. And so that can tell us, while American companies want to get off to a great third quarter, and they will probably start that way, which they have, the end results, we need to see what's going on with Mars, and there's weakness here. And so the Wall Street, or American companies' own country, America, might have issues with its ability to actually execute its goals. So that part about the third quarter beginning strong, but not being able to finish strong, we're getting into that part now where the difficulties are starting to arise, and the S&P has shown the first warning sign of that. I did express to you guys that these markets are going to continue to be volatile, especially in the second half of this year. And now you guys are going to see what I mean over the second half of this year. I have a couple of birth charts. I can't share them with you guys. They're related to money printing and people who print money. It's a part of why I remain bullish in the long term, and why I've continued to be bullish, and also why I know the bull market isn't over. There will be some intervention, but that's for the long term. In the short term, we have to deal with Saturn. And Saturn's about to put the brakes on the market in a serious way. All of these markets, pretty much with the exception of Bitcoin, which will be joining the party soon, and I'll talk about that, all of them are pretty much at all-time highs. And Bitcoin is very likely about to make an attempt for a new all-time high within the next 2 to 3 weeks before we get to the square. Like I said in the videos, the third quarter is going to be pretty euphoric. A lot of these markets have never been at all-time highs before. So for all these markets to be there, this is historic. You don't see this every day, nor do they stay there forever. Especially for an economy, when you look under the surface, it isn't doing that well. Something's got to give, and Saturn is telling us that he's coming to expose the market. So I'm still bullish, but the S&P, unfortunately, has broken some important structure. We're going to look at some technical analysis right now. I'm going to show you a little bit of what I mean. And with Saturn, the planet that says no, coming to square Jupiter, the planet that expands and says yes, we're likely going to see a pause or a move down. And let's take a look at that. So this is the S&P on a 1 month time frame. And we're going to learn some technical analysis a little bit today. This is a 1 month time frame. So each one of these candles is what they're called, represents 1 month of prices moving in a particular direction. All right. When you see these lines, that just shows that the price went to a certain place, but it didn't end the month there. So it looks like from this candle here representing the month of July, that we went all the way up in price to a high of 5,669, almost 5,700 on the S&P in the month of July. But now you can see that the price is now at 5,405, whatever. Big drop from that high. Why is this concerning? Well, technically, I want to draw your eyes to this here. You see this green candle here and how it looks like this red candle is bigger than this one? We call that engulfing. It's almost like Pac-Man is eating this one. And this red, when you see that, that means it's usually an indication that things might go lower. We can see a microcosm of that right here, actually, in, believe it or not, August, 3 years ago, in 2021. What happened later is the price went up for a couple of months, but then eventually came crashing down. This engulfing candle happened in April. Price has gone up for a couple of months, and we're pretty extended. I would not be surprised to see price coming down as we go into the Saturn-Jupiter square. Now, what's interesting about this, you guys, is, as I said in that video, tech stocks, right? This market, the S&P, is a weighted basket, and it's really being driven by Jupiter and Uranus, Pluto and Aquarius, these technological driven markets and companies like Nvidia and Microsoft. Well, and you can see the Dow Jones isn't having any problems right now because that industry is not based on tech the way the S&P is as a weighted basket. Although this index also does represent American companies. So this is where Jupiter and Gemini comes into play, where having little bits of facts can make market reactions be erratic. Right? Jupiter is not in the greatest strength in the sign of Gemini, but Gemini is still ruled by markets, and so there will still be a push in markets, but Gemini is mutable air. It's the most changeable of the air element as it exists. And so people will be changing their minds. Therefore, you'll see that reflected in the market. Up one day, down another. Up one day, down another. I like you, I don't like you. Wait, don't go, come back. Don't, wait, no, go away. Don't leave, wait, what are you doing? That's what the market is doing. And so, what's interesting about the S&P being driven by tech stocks is the orange man's comments about Taiwan. Yes, that's right, Trump said that if America wants Taiwan to be protected from China, well then they should pay for it financially. The issue with that statement is Taiwan produces most of the semiconductors in the world. Those semiconductors are what power the AI and the companies like Nvidia and Microsoft, the darlings that have been leading the bull run rally in the S&P. So that drop in profits has to do, by and large, with narrative by someone who, after surviving an assassination attempt, and the person who he was running against has dropped out of the race, people presume that this guy is just going to win the election. So his comments like that are now having a greater effect on the markets because of market participants hanging on to his words and trying to front run things that he says in terms of how they make their investments for the future. So you can blame the drop on the S&P on the orange man, but that is also why the other American markets are still doing all right for now. What concerns me is what I showed you with the S&P, though, is still related to structure. So I've seen this in crypto markets in particular. When Bitcoin is done making its move, money will rotate out of Bitcoin into the other cryptocurrencies like Ethereum and then eventually XRP and Doge and all those other crazy ones down the ladder. After about 3-4 weeks of that money rotation, if that move is done or exhausted, then money just leaves the market entirely, and the market then pulls back as a whole before then Bitcoin starts making the eventual move in whatever direction it's going to go. I think that could be what we're seeing in the traditional market, is all the money that the tech stock rally led and made is now being dispersed into other markets, and I think we'll likely see markets do well for the first couple of weeks of August, going into the August 19th full moon, in which the Saturn-Jupiter square becomes exact, and then we might see all of the traditional market pulling itself down into September. That is not a guarantee. That is not financial advice. That is my opinion and how I'm seeing the market right now. And for fun, I'm going to share with you a chart you're probably not going to see anywhere else. Look what's happened following this blue line. The pink line is what happens every year on average for the past, let's say, 60, 70 years. The blue line, however, is what happens during election years in the S&P 500. 2024, this year, is an election year. And you can see third quarter, June, July, bullish as predicted, but the end of July has a little bit of a dip in it. And then August and September go up, October goes down, and then into the election and at the end of the year, the market tends to go up. Now, what's interesting about September is it's Virgo season, and that's when naturally human beings tend to take harvest of what was grown through the spring and the summer, right? And this is also a time where it's Labor Day and people are either taking their last summer vacations or coming back from vacations in the States. This year, with the Saturn-Jupiter square at the end of August, I'm not seeing September being much of an up month, even though for the past 60 or 70 years or so we may have seen that. I'm looking at this early continuation of August to be on par with what's typically happened after this end of July dip, and I'm seeing that things will come down in August like we're seeing here, but I'm thinking that down move continues through September, and then we start to pick up sometime in October. Could be the end of October, could be the middle of October. We have eclipse season in the middle of September and in the first week of October. So for me, I am expecting things to turn around towards the upside, more towards the middle or end of October, going into the election. Now for Bitcoin. All right, this chart is not a political statement. It has nothing to do with the French Olympics or anything like that. I know it's pretty colorful, but this chart gives me resistance lines. And I'm seeing this green one here at about 79, 78K. Bitcoin, I think, is going to push up and attempt to make an all-new, all-time high, but it's going to run into issues around 78K. So this is Bitcoin on a weekly time frame. Each one of these candles shows a week of price movements. And this little indicator down here, the stochastics, shows me momentum. It is Sunday as the time of this recording, and Bitcoin's momentum has now confirmed that it wants to reach the upper end of this band, which is telling me that buyers now want to enter the market. So between May and July, the buyers are kind of left and they were a bit scared, and now they're coming back. And they're coming back right when Bitcoin is right at what's at the top of what's called a bull flag here. That's some technical analysis stuff. You can look up what a bull flag is. What we'll see though, now, if Bitcoin can stay above here, again, the end of the month, August 1st, that's 67, 68K, that will mean we are now above this channel. And if we're above this channel on the 1st, then there's not much up here in terms of buyers or sellers. It is in my opinion that at that point, Bitcoin will be free with this buyer momentum to now put an all-time high around 78K. At which point it will run into the Saturn-Jupiter square and likely have issues with the rest of the broader market. So you can thank the S&P for slowing down Bitcoin's parade at the end of August going into September. At least that's how I see it for now. That's not to mention Mercury retrograde. There will be one on the 4th of August, and this one will affect the Americas, which means American stock market will be affected as well. So if you have long positions open, or your position in the market in such a way where you thought it was going to go higher, you might want to reconsider that just for the end of August going into September. You might even want to reconsider those positions now. Now, those of you who bought my 2024 report, none of this is a surprise to you. Because in December, when I released that thing, I called out the August 19th full moon over 8 months ago. Think about how relaxed you would be right now if you knew this moment was coming 8 months ago. That is the power of financial astrology. It just continues to blow my mind, man. I love this stuff. Again, I don't give financial advice, and as I've said in other videos before, we are in the middle of World War III, which is escalating, and so what are the best places to put your money? Gold, silver, real estate, yes, but the United States economy, the United States, American businesses in particular, are going to be one of the better places to park that money rather than war-torn areas or banks that are collapsing throughout the world. So even though there may be a downturn over the next couple of months, I wouldn't panic, and you might even consider that an opportunity to eye certain positions that you might want to get into to finish off the rest of the bull market into 2025. But since I don't give financial advice, you can just completely ignore all of that. I hope that was entertaining. Be well. One love to you, and peace.